Redefine Transit. What's up? Yeah. All right. My name is Justin. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be here for a lot of reasons, but I love Sundays when we celebrate baptism and we get to see what God is doing, not just in the lives of the people on stage or the leaders in your group, but the lives of the people who sit next to you every single week. I love having our guests in the room, parents and friends of the people getting baptized, who probably sat there and thought the same thing I think every week at Transit. I wish we had something like this when we were in middle school. But here's a good thing. If you're in middle school, you do have Transit, and I'm glad that you're here, whether you're here for the first time in a long time or you come every week. It's going to be a great week. We've been in this series called Christmas Spirit. Don't worry if you've missed the other weeks of this series, because what I'm going to do is kind of summarize it all and wrap it up today, answer any questions that may have been presented through the rest of the series. But here's the deal. It's Christmas time, and here's what I know. Out of every single person in this room, there is something that everybody loves about the Christmas season. For me personally, you don't have to shout yours out. I just want you to think about it. For me personally, it's getting gifts. Ever since I was little, I loved Christmas because it meant I was getting stuff that I wanted. You know, the rest of the year, you were lucky to get something. Christmas is the time of year you know something's coming your way. And so no matter what that is for you, if it's the Christmas food or having family or the traditions, I'm sure you're looking forward to it. But when I was in middle school, my parents had the tradition of setting out gifts that they would buy for us. My mom would wrap them, and then they would put them out in real time. So, you know, a week before Christmas, the gifts that my parents would get would begin to pile up under the tree. So we would have some gifts there, and then when we wake up on Christmas morning, obviously there would be more gifts. But the gifts that were there, I was very protective of those because we had a rule in our house. If anybody opened the gifts and looked at what they got or looked at what someone else got, all the gifts would go away. And I didn't know if that meant they would just put them away till Christmas morning or if they would disappear indefinitely, but I took it very seriously. So if I thought somebody was looking at the gifts a little too long or a little too hard, I would have to shoo them away to the kitchen and say, let's get you some water, okay? Take a minute, all right? But one day my cousin Doug came over, and he is what they call the mischievous type. And so he was looking, he's like, dude, your parents are not home. Let's open some of those gifts. Let's just a little bit, you know. We'll just kind of take the tape off and we'll look. And I'm like, no, wrapping paper is so weak. When you pull the tape off, it leaves that little white part. And it never sticks back the right way. So my parents are going to know. They check. And so he's like, all right, whatever. And he kind of like made a move for it. And I blocked him. And I'm standing in front of the tree like it is my responsibility to defend these gifts for my family. You're going to come into my house and try to open our gifts? No, sir. So he goes away. And I'm like, okay, I won that battle. And he walks back in the room with a hockey stick. And I'm like, we're not playing hockey in the living room. He's like, no, but I'm looking at those gifts. And I was like, okay, it's on. Let's go. So he starts jabbing at me, things like that. He hits me a few times, and it hurts. I cried a little, not because I'm a baby, but because it makes you feel better. And so he gets a few good hits in, but finally I grab the stick and I pull it away, and I'm like, you shall not pass. And so I think it's over. And he leaves again, and he comes back with some rolls of toilet paper. And I'm like, joke's on you. My mom buys double and triple ply. It's super soft, and it's not going to hurt. So he starts throwing it. I'm like, I got to stop this guy. So I reach back to the tree, and I grab a candy cane. And I did what we've all done at least once in our lives. I began to sharpen that candy cane so sharp, you could pierce a diamond with it, you know? And it doesn't even take that long. So I'm like dodging the toilet paper while I'm sharpening this thing. And I'm like, if you get close to me, I'm going to impale you. And so he's kind of keeping his distance. And now the candy cane is razor sharp, and I'm ready to go. So I'm like, bring it on. And so he starts to go one way, go another way. He's closing some of the distance. And then he thinks he has this genius move. He kicks the ottoman, the little footrest in front of the couch. He kicks it at me thinking I'm going to take him out, and then I'm going to go around him, and I'm going to dive into the presents and open them all up, and he's going to ruin my Christmas. And so when he kicks it, I'm way ahead of him. I'm already looking at this ottoman. I'm jumping over the ottoman. I've extended myself to keep my balance, but I forgot that I have a razor-sharp candy cane in my hand. At this point, he takes a step forward, and I kid you not, it went right into the place of his eye where the tears come out. And so I pull it out and step back and think, I just blinded the man. Now he definitely can't see the gifts. Hooray! And he starts screaming and panicking, and his hand's over his eye, and we're sitting there like, is that the smell of peppermint? And he's like, I'm crying. I'm like, oh, yeah, sorry. And so eventually my parents come home. Nothing was wrong with him permanently, at least, but he never tried to touch the gifts again. And it mattered to me because gifts are like my thing. It's what Christmas is about for me. It's kind of the whole thing for me. But here's the deal. whether you've been in church in transit or just you kind of hear the traditions of the holidays, you're going to hear a lot, you're going to sing a lot, you're going to hear songs on the radio about this baby named Jesus. And it's kind of odd, isn't it, that we have this whole celebration and this whole holiday and everything centered around a baby. And it makes you ask the question, is Christmas just about a baby being born? Because babies are born all the time and we don't celebrate and go crazy like this. But is Christmas just about a baby being born? And in order to understand Christmas fully, and in order to be able to wrap your head around it, we've got to do something I call pinching out, okay? It's kind of weird, pinching out. We've got to pinch out on Christmas. Here's what I mean by that. This picture right here is one of the most famous paintings of all time. Everybody will know it when they see it, but it's zoomed in so far, all you see are these brush strokes and the blurry paint and things like that. It's almost impossible to tell the full concept of the picture. But if we pinch out like on an iPhone or a device, exactly, you're going to see Starry Night by Van Gogh. So, what we need to do this morning really quickly is we need to pinch out, we need to zoom out on Christmas, and we need to look at the context of everything that was happening before this baby was born in order to understand if Christmas is really just about a baby being born. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to invite some friends one at a time to come out and share 3 different passages that maybe you've heard before, but are crucial to understand what's going on in the full context of Christmas. So if you would invite my first friend, welcome Tristan out here, yep. Tristan is going to take us all the way back to the very beginning. I don't mean the beginning of the Christmas story. I mean the beginning of time in the book of Genesis, the first book of the Bible, to get us started on our Christmas journey. Tristan, take it away.
In the beginning, there was nothing. Nothing to hear, nothing to feel, nothing to see. Only emptiness and darkness and nothing. Nothing but nothing. But God was there, and God had a wonderful plan. I will take this emptiness, God said, and I'll fill it up. Out of the darkness, I'm going to make light. And out of nothing, I'm going to make everything. God looked at everything he made, perfect. And it was. But all the stars and the mountains and the oceans and the galaxies and everything were nothing compared to how much God loved his children. He would move heaven and earth to be near them always. Whatever happened, whatever it cost him, he would always love them. And so it was that the wonderful love story began.
Thank you, Tristan. Give it up for Tristan. So let me summarize that for you. In the beginning, God looked into nothingness, into darkness, and he created light. A lot of you remember this from the creation account. And then God created all the stuff in the earth. He created man and woman, and he gave them this mission to not eat of this fruit in the middle of the garden, but everything else was theirs to enjoy. And as the story goes, the enemy or Satan or the devil comes in and tempts Eve, and they eat the fruit. And in that moment, sin entered into the world. It shattered God's ideal, and darkness reappeared. And so God looked at this love relationship he had between Adam and Eve, and he wanted to do something about the darkness. He wanted to do something about the sin in the world because he knew thousands of years later there would be students sitting in transit, and if he didn't do something, they would be separated from him. And God so badly wanted a relationship with you that he had to put a plan in place. And then we fast forward years and years, and we get to the prophet Isaiah. A prophet is somebody who could discern God's voice and the will of God, and his job was to carry that message on to God's people and to share what God was saying. And Isaiah wrote this passage that Nanette is about to come out and read, and this was Isaiah, and he was sharing God's plan for the darkness that entered the world through sin. And so Nanette, take us through this verse in Isaiah.
Dear little flock, you're all wandering away from me, like sheep in an open field. You've always been running away from me, and now you're lost, and you can't find your way back. But I can't stop loving you. I will come to find you. So I'm sending you a shepherd to look after you and love you and carry you home to me. You've been stumbling around like people in a dark room. But into the darkness, a bright light will shine. It will chase away all the shadows like sunshine. A little baby will be born, a royal son. His mommy will be a young girl who doesn't have a husband. His name will be Emmanuel, which means God has come to live with us. He is one of King David's children's children's children. He is the Prince of Peace. Someone is going to come and rescue you. But he won't be who anyone expects. He will be a king, but he won't live in a palace, and he won't have lots of money. He will be poor, and he will be a servant. But this king will heal the world. He will be a hero. He will fight for his people and rescue them from their enemies. But he won't have armies, big armies, and he won't have swords. He will make the blind see, and he will make the lame leap. He will make everything the way it was always meant to be. But people will hate him, and they won't listen to him. He will be like a lamp, and he will suffer, and he will die. It's the secret rescue plan made in the beginning of the world. And it's the only way to get you back. He won't stay dead. I will make him alive again. Yes, the rescuer will come. Look for him. Watch for him. Wait for him. He will come. I promise.
Give it up for Nanette. So in the beginning of the world, sin enters and darkness reappears, and God needs a plan to get rid of this darkness. And as Isaiah says, here's God's plan. He's going to send you a rescuer. He's going to send you a king, but it's not going to be what you expect. See, most of the time when we think of rescuer, when we think of king, we think of somebody with a sword on horseback with a huge army behind them coming in to save the day. And Isaiah is saying, actually, he's going to come in the form of a baby from a very young mother who doesn't have a husband. And people would have been like, wait a second, this doesn't add up. How could our rescuer be a baby and come from these humble beginnings? And Isaiah keeps saying, watch for this baby. Watch for this rescuer. And so some years go by, nothing. More years go by, nothing. And I want you to imagine you're 11, 12, 13 years old. And this prophet comes and says, hey, God is sending a rescuer to clear out this darkness, a light to come into the darkness, to save you and restore relationship with God. And now you're 17, and that promise is just an old memory that you have. And you're 25, and maybe you're thinking, maybe I misunderstood, or maybe the prophet did. Or you're 40 years old, and you're forgotten about it altogether. You're 60, and now you're growing a little resentful because you haven't seen the promise God made. Hundreds of years go by, and people have been waiting for this promise. It's been passed down through generations where people have told about the promise of God through Isaiah's word. And people are probably wondering. They're probably skeptical. They're probably resentful a little bit. But then in the book of Luke, a very familiar passage comes to us about the day that all of this prophecy and all of this promise unfolded. And Andy is going to come and he's going to read this passage. And as he does, I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to imagine yourself in this moment, waiting for this promise of God. Hundreds of years have gone by. Your ancestors have told your grandparents, who told your parents, who told you. And now on this night, this is what happens.
Everything was ready. The moment God had been waiting for was here at last. God was coming to help his people just as he had promised in the beginning. But how would he come? What would he be like? What would he do? Mountains would bow down, seas would have roared, trees would have clapped their hands, but the earth held its breath. And as silent as snow falling, he came in when no one was looking in the darkness. He came. Now Mary and Joseph had to take a trip to Bethlehem. This was the town King David was from. And when they reached the little town, they found every room was full. Every bed was taken. Go away, the innkeepers told them. There isn't any place for you. Where would they stay? Soon, Mary's baby would come, and they would find anywhere except an old, tumble-down stable. So, they stayed where the cows and the donkeys and the horses stayed. And there in the stables, against the quiet of the night, God gave the world his wonderful gift. The baby that would change the entire world was born. Mary and Joseph wrapped him up to keep him warm, and they gazed in wonder at God's gift lying in a manger. Mary and Joseph named him Jesus, Emmanuel, which means God has come to live with us.
Yeah. Thank you, Andy. And so, yes, give it up for Andy. And so that kind of lands us at the part of the story we're all familiar with, where Linus comes out and he says, I can tell you the meaning of Christmas Charlie Brown, the part that maybe you've heard time and time again, whether you're a church person or not. And the reason that's so significant is when we zoom out from just the birth of the baby, we see a promise from God that solved a problem that we could not solve on our own, no matter how good we were or hard we tried. That when that baby's born, it proved that God loved us and he keeps his promises. By starting at the beginning, we reframe and redefine what Christmas is about. By starting at the beginning and looking at the context of this birth, we can reframe the implications and the amazing love of God. The amazing love of a God who keeps his promises. So, here's what Christmas is about. Christmas is about God's faithfulness. When we sing about babies being born, when you think about that this Christmas season, when you see a manger scene maybe set up in your house or in somebody's yard, I don't want you just to think about a baby being born, but I want you to think about a promise kept. The implications of God keeping that promise meant that one day you could enter into a relationship with Jesus and be restored and cross from death to life. Christmas is about God's faithfulness. I'm going to pray for you and then leave you with a deeply theological question to wrestle with on your way back to group. Bow your heads with me. Heavenly Father, thank you for today. Thank you for Christmas. Thank you for your son, Jesus. And thank you for being a God who keeps his promises. I don't know where everybody's at today or how they expect Jesus to show up in their life, but God, you oftentimes exceed our expectations. And so I pray that all these students would be open-minded to your love and your faithfulness today. God, thank you for loving us even when we don't feel like we can love ourselves. It's in your son's name we pray. Amen.